Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cinema Scoop podcast with Sam and Jordan. Today, Jordan is going to talk about her music and movies episode regarding the 1975 and the various movies they sing about. So, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so this is kind of going to be like a mini series that we'll do sporadically. We'll call it Music and Movies. And basically, what I want to do is take an artist and look at their music videos, their lyrics, any of the themes that they have in their music, and look for films that they reference and answer the questions of like, are the movies that they reference even good? Not necessarily is the music good. That's not what we're talking about exactly. But ever since I was young, I've always been a very big music person. Sam and I kind of love movies together, but arguably Sam knows more about movies and arguably I know more about music. And if you're speaking specifically on lyrics, for some reason, I've always been that person that wants to like investigate lyrics. Like, I think there was a lot of TikToks that we saw during the Drake and Kendrick beef where English teachers were talking about their students having conversations together about what the triple, quadruple entendres mean of lyrics inside the rap beef. I was that child, but I didn't have like Kendrick rap beef to do it about. I had like Switchfoot lyrics to sit there and look at.
Reliant K.
Reliant K. Like, I remember Googling and like getting on the computer and Googling, like, what does entropy mean? Because I heard John Foreman sing about it. Like, and like looking up what does apathy mean? Because Reliant K sang about it. And so I have always been a lyrics girl. I definitely was a very weird kid that had like lyrics written on the sides of my Converse. So I'm a person who reads way too far between the lines when it comes to lyrics. So, and what better band to start this out with than like my favorite band of all time.
How many times have we seen them?
So I was having this conversation with someone recently. We were talking about live music. And I was like, do not get me started talking about the times I've seen the 1975 live because I just straight up won't shut up. Like, I will become that annoying person. 11, 13, if you count acoustic sets that we've been to that were like put on by a radio show. And really, those were only seeing Maddie play an acoustic set. So 11 official.
Yeah, that's not a lot for some people, like, who go and see, like, Fish every day.
Yeah, yeah.
Someone like me, I don't really like live music because I'm a weirdo, but I'll go see the 1975 with you all the time. And some other bands that we'll talk about maybe another time, but
Yeah, you actually put up with going to see a lot of live music with me
it's really the standing that I hate.
Honestly, I agree though. Like, I if I can sit, I'm happy. I will sit for any concert. I have a hard time. Like, I'm old at this point. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, we've seen them a lot of times. The shows in and of themselves feel very theatrical and very cinematic in a lot of ways. And I mean, they're just incredible live. They're for obvious reasons. I've seen them a lot of times, and I would think that like if you haven't gone to a 1975 show before and you like marginally like them, highly recommend going. It's a very fun experience. So the questions I'll answer: what films does the 1975 reference in their music? And second, are they even good? So to kick things off, shall I say, and this is how it starts. So I'm going to go album by album. And there are some of their albums that really don't reference any movies. Their earlier work references a lot of movies, and it's kind of petered off towards the last album that they had. So their first album is the self-titled album called The 1975, and it was released in 2013. And I actually bought the album in 2013 because I was waiting for it to come out. So if that tells you how long I've liked them, I liked them before their actual album was even out. They had released like a bunch of singles and stuff. And I do want to point this out. This is not a film reference, but it is a really cool tidbit of information. So the first 3 albums that they have, the first opening track of all of the albums is a song called The 1975. And it's sort of like a very short song that It's got very minimalistic lyrics, very like breathy, earthy sounding vibes, very tonal and mood setting, but it's done three different ways. So that with their first album, it's done the first way. And then the second album, it's done a little bit more like cathedral sounding. And then the third album, it's done a little bit more auto tuned sounding to kind of fit the vibe of that album. And in an interview, when asked like why they do this, Maddie basically said that the reason that they wanted to do this like check-in song at the beginning of all of their albums was to basically sound as if you're booting up your Sega Genesis, and it's that sound that comes on when you're turning on your gaming console. Like for Sega Genesis, it's like Sega. It's supposed to sound like that. And it's so I although that's not a movie reference, we could technically count the Sonic movie because that's what I think of when I think of Sega Genesis. But I thought that was kind of an interesting tidbit. So anyway, moving on. The first one that I'm going to go through is kind of a deep cut reference. So they have this song called Sex, and the lyrics are, use your hands in my spare time. Now, if you were to look back a little farther, the 1975 has been a band for literally ever, like since they were in high school. And so they've gone through like several different names. Most bands will come up with, several different names of their band before they land on the one that they get famous under. When they used to be a band called Drive Like I Do, they had the same song, Sex, but the lyrics were slightly different. And it, at some points, used to be called, instead of Sex, it was called Lost Boys, which is a direct reference to the 1987 Joel Schumacher movie called The Lost Boys, which is basically like a punk vampire movie. The lyrics, instead of use your hands in my spare time, used to be use your fangs in my spare time, which is interesting that it's changed over time. So I watched The Lost Boys recently. This is one of my more recent movie watches. No surprise, if it's a vampire movie, I'm fucking there for it. Like, it's good. It's so, like, corny and very 80s. And I mean, it's impossible to really describe the movie if you haven't seen it because it's exactly how you imagine it. It's punk vampires that are in a town that these kids move to, and the oldest brother is sort of getting involved with the vampire mafia crew, basically. And the leader of the vampires has a leather jacket, and there's just so much good music, like quintessential 80s music that was playing in this movie. And the mom is the same mom from Edward Scissorhands, Diane, is it West? It's Wiest. But it's funny because you can recognize her voice anywhere, the Avon lady. So it's just funny that she's the mom in this too. So anyway, yeah, it was a really good movie, and it strangely is made on 4K, and I really want to own it on 4K now. So yeah, that is the first film reference. I would say first recommended, watching for a 1975 fan would be The Lost Boys. I would give it a thumbs up. So the next reference on this album this is probably their most well-known movie reference that most people are aware of. It's during the song Robbers. And this was the first film reference that I caught of the 1975s when I first became a fan. The end of the song, it's a very theatrical type of song. It's very gut-wrenching love song. But it's a storytelling song about two people that are robbing a store and they're getting arrested, but they're madly in love with each other. And the end of the song is, she says, "Babe, you look so cool," are the lyrics. And that is a direct reference to the movie True Romance, directed by Tony Scott. And it's
one of my favorites.
It's one of our favorite movies. The only reason we even watched it was because of this song. Honestly, though, it's an incredible movie.
Gary
Oldman is like next level in this movie. If you've not seen this movie, watch it for Gary Oldman's performance alone. It is honestly and the other thing about it is I think it's written by Quentin Tarantino. So it's got a very Tarantino feel to it, but it's also got this very like 80s romance thing going on. Christian Slater and Patricia
Yeah.
Arquette, across from each other. And it's basically Patricia Arquette is a prostitute, and Christian Slater is this kind of like nerdy guy who's really into kung fu movies, and they fall in love and craziness ensues. Very similar to the song and the storytelling behind the song. So, I also forgot that Dennis Hopper and Val Kilmer and Brad Pitt are in True Romance. But it's, yes, another recommended watch if you're a 1975 fan, if you haven't already seen the movie. Big, big, big thumbs up on that one. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. So that's the first album. The second album, this is where we get a little weird. So, second album, I Like It When You Sleep, For You Are So Beautiful Yet So Unaware of It, is the longest album title of all time. But if you were around for, the emo phase of the early to late aughts, you understand that songs and albums with really long titles it was just par for the course at that time. This is a bit late to that though, because I think I Like It When You Sleep came out in like 2016. And it's definitely not an emo punk album by any means. The funny thing about this album though is that the music tonally is different than the first album. The first album's a little bit more like underground, garagey, poppy, black and white, and the second album is a bit more candy colored. The way that they've described it in interviews is that they wanted to make something that sounded like the soundtrack to a John Hughes movie. And I could have maybe, injected like insert John Hughes movie here as recommended watching material for a 1975 fan, but I would never shut up if we introduced that topic. And there's not like a specific John Hughes movie that they're trying to soundtrack, but I would say that is the best way to describe the album, is that it's like a John Hughes movie soundtrack. The funny thing though is that there's more of a movie reference in one of the music videos that they have from this album. The song Somebody Else, which is also another very popular song that they have. The music video for this starts out, I think it's like 3 minutes of just Maddie in this room, and he's surrounded by other versions of himself that are not speaking to each other. And then he basically picks up a suitcase and walks out of the room. And I remember watching it and feeling like, what the fuck is going on in this music video? Like, this is so weird. Is this like a direct reference to something? Like, I immediately knew, I was like, this can't be like an original thought, because this feels very referential to something that exists. And sure enough, it's referencing David Lynch's short film Rabbits, which was the first time I'd ever actually heard of David Lynch. And we all know how that goes for me. But what's interesting about Rabbits is that Rabbits is basically just like a short film about some anthropomorphic rabbits that are in a house together. The camera is angled at the same way that the camera is angled in the beginning of the Somebody Else music video. And nobody's really speaking to each other for quite a while. There's this awkward tension. There's this like hollow sound running through the background. It's interesting because the version that the 1975 do is not anthropomorphic rabbits. It's just different versions of Maddie. And then behind him, I want to say that there's like a framed picture of the rabbits that are in the short film. You don't necessarily have to see the Rabbits, the short film. But if you wanted a full feature-length movie that contains the short film Rabbits, you could watch David Lynch's Inland Empire, which was the last movie he made. I think it was
2006, maybe?
Yeah. And, we've talked about David Lynch a lot on this podcast because I'm #1 David Lynch fan. He's made some really interesting movies, and they're thought-provoking and really spark great conversation. But Inland Empire is one of those movies that is probably the most thought-provoking movie I've seen in a long time. The weird part is that it has the actual short film of rabbits interspersed throughout the film. And a lot of the movie is shot as if it's a horror movie, but it's not really described as to like what the horror is. You sort of have to kind of watch and figure out, why do you feel this like sense of impending doom. But overall, Inland Empire, it's a movie about Laura Dern has accepted a role in this movie. So it's a movie within a movie. And she realizes quickly that the previous actress that was going to be playing her part was murdered. It gives me the same vibes that like House of Leaves does as a book, where it's like a feeling of terror that you can't actually put your finger on or describe why it's horrifying. It's a very like niche feeling that's hard to describe, but yeah, that's actually the only other movie I have for this album. So I would say, if we're going to say, do I recommend it? Do I like it? I think if you're a casual movie watcher, I would say don't watch Inland Empire. If you're a person who likes to watch weird movies, or you like horror, or you like very strange, unsettling movies, if you like Midsommar, or you like Ari Aster, or, surrealist films in general, and you want to watch something very thought provoking, absolutely watch it. But it's not like a popcorn movie by any means. It's more of like a art house movie. But yeah, so on to the next album. Their next album came out in 2018. It's called A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships. And the tone of this album is a bit more centered around the internet age and sort of like what has the internet done to us and like what have we done to the internet. And it's an interesting album for sure. There's really only two references that I have. One, I don't know if we've actually talked about this before, but it's in the song Inside Your Mind. The song is kind of like a dark romance song where he's talking about being like unhealthily obsessed with someone and wanting to be one with them in a very like symbiotic way. The lyrics go, "The back of your head is at the front of my mind. Soon I'll crack it open just to see what's inside your mind." I don't know if it's necessarily confirmed, but it's pretty easy to spot that that is a reference to the movie Gone Girl, where he's like got her head right below his arm and he's like talking about how beautiful her skull is and how he wants to crack it open to understand exactly how she is. I actually do think maybe they've confirmed that that's what it's from, but that is an incredible movie. I recommend that to anybody. I loved the book. I'm a big Gillian Flynn fan, and all of her books are amazing. Great, like gritty crime fiction, psychological thriller for sure. But Gone Girl specifically, David Fincher directed. There's really nobody better to direct something like that than David Fincher in my mind. If you haven't heard what Gone Girl is about, it's basically unreliable narrator. It's a wife that has gone missing and her husband is sort of the main suspect. And it's told dual perspective to try to figure out, like, did she run away? Did she fake her murder? Like, what's actually happening here? And that probably sounds like a very basic story, but it gets all kinds of crazy and fucked up and twisted, very typical David Fincher style. So, yeah. And then the second one, this is maybe my favorite film reference for this album, I would say. There is a music video for the song It's Not Living If It's Not With You. And it is a direct play on a specific performance during the Talking Heads' Stop Making Sense. He even kind of has like a big suit at one point in the music video, and the lighting is exactly the same as Stop Making Sense. And they play a little bit more on like the surrealist nature of, I think the beginning of the music video, he wakes up and like walks onto stage and then does the performance and then realizes at the end of the music video it was all a dream type of thing. And I like stuff like that. I think it's interesting. But I had to watch Stop Making Sense just so that I could see for myself if it was directly exactly like it. I mean, if you put a picture next to each other, it's very, very similar. And I don't even remember what song it is specifically that they do that is exactly like It's Not Living or the music video. But it's like maybe midway through the movie where it's just like very minimalistic lighting, 2 layers of the band, and big suit. That's about it. So Okay, so we've come to the last two albums. They have an album from 2020 that is highly slept on. A lot of people hate it. I don't hate it. I think it needs to be put at the forefront of more people's minds. It's called Notes on a Conditional Form. It's way more garage sounding, way less polished and produced than a lot of their other albums. It's their longest album. And it has zero film references, and it's very sad. But I love that album. But I had to kind of put a little bit of a plug on there. Notes is one of their best albums. Their most recent album from 2022 is called Being Funny in a Foreign Language, and there's really only one film reference in there, and I think it's a stretch. We'll call it a stretch, but there's a part in the song I'm in Love with You where he says, "Well, I got it. I found it. I just gotta keep it. Don't fuck it, you Muppet." So we could include the entire Muppet franchise here. I won't because I'm not going to be weird. But I do have to say, Muppet movies are good, and I mean, I know that it's British slang to just be like to call someone a Muppet, but I would happily be a Muppet. We recently rewatched part of the Muppets Christmas Carol, and
that's my favorite one.
it's good. When I was a kid, I really liked Muppet Treasure Island. I thought that one was good.
I grew up with that one too, and then I started it maybe like 1 or 2 years ago with Grace, and it's really bad.
It's not
Because
good.
it's just like this like 7 or 8 year old boy just constantly singing
Oh,
pre-puberty, and it's just not good.
I think I remember that. Yeah, but when I was a kid, I fucked with that hard. Like I was like, "This is cool. I want to be a pirate." Like I thought it was cool. Yeah, so that's technically all of the film references that are in the 1975 music and music videos. There's an extended universe here that I could have gone into where, we talk about films that they have discussed in interviews. I didn't want to go that far. We could have also gone as far as like what films are referenced in their live, performances. There's a ton. We could have gotten into Cronenberg with Videodrome and, um, Patrick Bateman. We could have gotten into some American Psycho stuff, but I didn't want to necessarily go that deep. This is really just for like the casual listener. If you like the band, these are a couple of recommended watches. Um, and we'll close out the episode just by a brief little snippet of some of our favorite things. So, Sam, do you have any favorite lyrics at all?
Well, I my favorite song is "Love It If We Made It," which is on um, the album "A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships." So I would say, I mean, most of the lyrics in that song. Um,
Specifically, excited to be indicted.
well, I mean, everything he says is pretty much
Ripped from a headline.
yeah, or it's just a talking point to the existential dread of the online age that we all face.
I think maybe one of the most like poignant pieces of lyrics that I really like is from the song I Always Want to Die Sometimes, where he says, "If you can't survive, just try." I really like that one. But if you ask me tomorrow, I might say something different. And then, what is your favorite song? Is it Love It If We Made It? Yeah. That music video is incredible too. I think my favorite song, if you were to ask me, it might be Milk. I really like that one a lot.
Yeah, that's probably a top 5.
Yeah, I really like Milk a lot, but I mean, again, you could ask me any day and it might be different. Another big one.
Somebody Else, which you mentioned.
I love Somebody Else. I really like their song Happiness from their newest album. It's such like a happy song. I don't know how to explain that. And then I think maybe my third favorite at this point in time would be Bagsy Not in Net. That one's a really, really, really good one. And like the live performance of it was magical. It was just like amazing.
I like the sound.
I really like the sound too. That one's really good. Yeah. What's your
Oh,
favorite?
Frail State of Mind is a
Oh,
great one.
Frail State of Mind is such a good one too. That one's good. There's a good piece of lyrics in that. What's the vibe? I wouldn't know. I'm usually in bed at this time. Like, I do like that one a lot. And then what's your favorite album?
I would say A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships, but I mean, I do like pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
It's very close.
I actually think I've always said A Brief Inquiry is my favorite as well, and I'm going to stick by that because it's a no skip album for me. There's a couple of albums that they have where I'm like, I don't love this particular song, or I'm not in the mood for this, but I can listen to A Brief Inquiry all the way through without skipping. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks for listening. We're going to try to do some more artists. We're thinking maybe, I know Chapel Roan has less of a music backlog to go through, but it would be a fun little mini episode to do, like, are there any films that Chapel has referenced? I know specifically Kendrick Lamar would be a really great one, but that's going to take a ton of research. Um,
Yeah.
but it'll be really fun to go through those too, because there's several that I've noticed in Kendrick Lamar lyrics where I'm like, well, I haven't seen that movie yet, and so gonna have to do some work for this one. So thanks for listening.
Bye.